Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this evening's Town Council meeting. We're actually going to start with a presentation from Commander Daum, Amy Daum, from the 2nd District. This request came about as a result of the drone program that's been administered through other parts of the county. And there's some questions that residents and I think us as a council had about the program, the efficacy of the program. And then we might have other questions related to crime statistics and things like that. So Commander, I don't know if you'd like to give an overview of things first or dive right into questions. Probably an overview of the program, how it came to be. The last time that I personally had heard about it, there was a pilot drone program for Wheaton. And then I kind of lost track of it from there until more recently it was like, oh, it might be expanded. So if you wouldn't mind providing some statistics around it, do you find this to be an effective tool? What are the pros and cons of it as it relates to privacy? I think that might be some questions out front. And anything else you could provide before we dive into our questions, that would be helpful.
Yeah, so let's talk about the drone program. And I want to start with why. And there's a couple different reasons why. So when we talk about law enforcement, not just in Montgomery County, but across the United States, what we're seeing is fewer people who want to become cops. And we know that. We know that it's related to a lot of different societal issues, but it's also related to a declining birth rate. So regardless of, I know you had said you're in retail, right? Regardless of really industry, what we're seeing is we have fewer people entering the workforce. And that is already becoming kind of concerning for a lot of different industries. When you're looking at firefighting, you're looking at public safety, you're looking at the military, right? But I'm in law enforcement, so I'll talk about it from my perspective. We know that in the mid-90s, there were several grant programs that enlarged many of our police forces. They were hiring officers through COPS grants, and police departments were really able to expand the number of police officers that they could hire to address the needs of our communities. Now, the thing is, the mid-90s were now long enough ago that those officers are leaving. So we're coming up against two problems. First, we can't find new police officers, and our really knowledgeable, experienced police officers are retiring. So now we kind of have a problem. So we need to start looking at newer and innovative ways where we can start using technology as a force multiplication tool in law enforcement in our communities, because we know that just hiring more people is not going to be that overnight fix. So one of the things, Captain Kokinos, who is currently our Special Operations Division captain, he went out and visited a small town out in California, and they had started a program called Drone as First Responder. And the Drone as First Responder program was a fixed site drone that left from one specific building. And you have to understand, this is a small town. Okay, so they can, and it's not in a no-fly zone. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but they can cover their whole area basically with one drone. So if they get a call for a person with a gun, for example, that drone as first responder can go, and let's say it's in the middle of Wisconsin Avenue, for example. If we were to get a call for a man with a gun in the middle of Wisconsin Avenue, that drone as first responder can fly over that scene and see, what do they see? And this makes it a little bit safer for the police officers who are responding, but also the community. Because if we have that immediate real-time information that's being monitored by police officers or even civilian staff, and they can look and see, yes, this is something that's happening. This is exactly where this person is. This is what they're wearing. This is where they're going. That makes it a lot more easier and a lot more efficient for us, number one, to deploy the correct resources, to ensure the right resources are going, and respond to what is the community doing? What do they need at the time? So when we talk about calls like that, those are the types of calls we're using Drone as First Responder for, but we're also using them in our downtown Silver Spring, downtown Wheaton areas, in calls for service from larcenies. A lot of our retail establishments, again, Stephanie, we go back to retail establishments, are experiencing an increase in larcenies. What can we do to start addressing that problem? And as we're seeing fewer and fewer police officers, frankly, we need that force multiplication. We can get there very quickly. We can see what we can see. And we know, oh, is this something we need to send a police officer to? For example, if we have an individual who's behaving erratically, we see this in our community a lot. We know that mental health people in crisis is an enormous concern. But are the police always the best responders? And that's something that the drone can help us answer. Is this really a police call for service, or is this a call for service that we should send a different resource to? Whether that's Bethesda Cares, whether that's Health and Human Services, whatever that proper resource is, we can understand that through that information. So, and that's exactly what we were seeing Chula Vista, which is like the town out in California, they were doing. They were using this program to determine what's the proper resource, how many of them, how is the community being impacted? And that's what we're doing here. We have piloted the program first in downtown Silver Spring. You all know that there have been some issues in downtown Silver Spring. And we are seeing a real impact in, number one, the cops know what they're going to, right? So they know, is there actually a person with a gun? That changes our response. That changes how quickly we can get there, whether we're driving priority or we're driving routine. That changes how many cops we're sending. That changes the resources. So we can confirm that information first and foremost. And we're seeing great success. We've been able to make several arrests based off of information that was provided by the drone, whether that's, hey, we see a suspect that just ran into the parking garage. Fabulous. Now we know we can send officers to that parking garage. We're seeing that similar success as we roll out that program in downtown Wheaton, which is the second site. As you know, there are 3 proposed drone locations in the current budget. There was some, and I know when Todd first reached out, there was a question about whether or not the Bethesda drone specifically would move forward in that budget. When it went to Public Safety Committee, it was looking a little bit like that drone was going to get taken out of the budget. Council President Andrew Friedson is a stalwart supporter of public safety. He and I had a conversation, and he pushed very hard to ensure that the 3 proposed drone sites, which are Germantown, Gaithersburg, and Bethesda, are all tranched together in the budget. So that means that basically if they're all going to move forward as one big bucket list item. So if drones get passed, all 3 are going to get passed. And Council President Friedson, again, worked very hard on this. It was in response to many community members, chambers of commerce stepping up and saying, hey, this is something that we want to see in our community because of the success we're seeing in other communities. So I appreciate that. We don't know what the budget's going to look like yet. We should know by May 23rd. And that'll be the point where we start, are we going to move forward? What's it going to look like? The program that's already being piloted had addressed many of the community's concerns regarding privacy, because Captain Kokinos again went out to a number of communities and showed this is what a drone is. We're not hovering outside people's windows. We're not looking inside your apartment. We're in very public areas and very public spaces for very specific types of events. So many of the privacy concerns that were initially raised by the community were really quelled by those types of meetings. And we can certainly set something up should that budget move forward, and we'll know soon, hopefully, what's going to happen, what that budget looks like, and what we're going to see out of it. So with that being said, that's kind of the overarching overview of the program. Do y'all have any specific questions?
So it's a heat sensing kind of, so someone commits potentially is committing a crime, that the drone is called, and then if they flee, they because of the heat sensing.
Well, it's video.
Okay.
So there's a video feed that's going back to the pilot.
Okay.
That says, hey, this is the person, hey, they're leaving. And y'all know. So I drove in this morning from Damascus. It took me 2 hours and 8 minutes to get to Bethesda. Traffic down here is a nightmare, right? So if I can get a drone up faster from downtown Bethesda to another spot in downtown Bethesda, then I can get a cop there. So for example, we know that we're having some commercial robberies in downtown Bethesda, but it's taking my top cops time to get there, even lights and sirens, just because of the pure volume of traffic.
Yes.
I can get a drone out there faster, and we know where that suspect goes.
But if
That's the
they
idea.
go into the woods or something, can the drone?
The drone's not going to go in the woods. We do have different types of tools. I know that we have heat-seeking drones, which we've used before. Most of the time I'm missing people. I don't know if the specific drones for drones as first responder are also heat equipped.
Okay. Good. So what is the, can you provide some anecdotes in terms of the efficacy, or obviously you're really wanting this?
So what I'm going to encourage you to do is because the stories I tell are not going to be as impactful as watching it for yourself.
Hmm.
So you can actually go on the Montgomery County Police website. If you search press releases that involve the drone, you can actually see what the drone saw and the success stories about the drone. The drone also reports out on every deployment. So you can see, oh, this is what the drone was doing today. Right. And you can see that for all of our drone programs. Drone as first responder is just one piece. We also have drones that we deploy for other reasons, whether those are missing people. We deploy them on some of our emergency responses where we may have an individual who we know needs attention, whether that's a lone barricaded subject or someone else. We can get information about these types of incidents and crimes or incidents in progress.
So drone as first responder is a completely different kind of
Correct.
drone than, and that's what this three-pronged approach with Germantown, Gaithersburg, and Bethesda. is,
Correct.
first
That's the drone
responder.
as first responder. We deployed drones several years ago as a tool within our tool shed, I guess, of things that we can use. So we've been using them, but drone as first responder is pretty unique.
So there's a lot of helicopters that fly over the town. There's a lot of, you talked a little bit about no-fly zone. It's not at that
No,
height
it's
that you were-
lower
Yeah.
than what you're seeing. And we're in an interesting position, right? Because you don't see this throughout the county. We're in a no-fly zone. There's really no part of this district that isn't in a no-fly zone. So there are additional FAA regulations that we need to ensure that we meet in order to put a drone up.
But that's the only, as long as the FAA knows, and
Yes,
there's no other like
there's a whole lot
limitation.
of things we have to do, but there's no other limitations.
Okay, all right. Do you guys have, yeah, please, Stephanie.
Do you have written policies in place regarding how information from the drone is stored, the privacy issues that you were talking about, as well as any potential anti-discrimination guardrails? I don't know, is the video detailed enough that you can do any kind of recognition or get a description of a suspect just from the drone video, or?
So when we talk about AI and its
Yeah.
use, like if we're talking about facial recognition, there's a policy that guides our use of facial
Right.
recognition. And it is very, very narrowly defined on when we can use that. So if we're
Got it.
going to use facial recognition on something like drone, we're talking about a murder. We're talking about a rape that just occurred. We are not talking
Like
about
imminent danger.
correct. We're
Right.
not talking about some kid took a lollipop.
Right.
Right. That's not at all what we're talking about. And yes, we have policies that very narrowly define drones, facial recognition, all types of investigative tools. Many of those policies are available online and fully public. Again, check our website, Montgomery County Police.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful, by the way. Just to make sure I understand. So the drone only responds to calls. It's not just hovering around a community.
No, yeah, no.
That's really important, I think, for us to understand. And does it go back to its base, so to speak?
Yeah. It's kind of like if you have a Roomba, right? And you know how your Roomba will go out and vacuum your house.
I
and then
don't
it
have
kinda
one,
like
so I can't tell you about
goes
that.
back to its base. I really want one. But the drone's the same way. As soon as it's done, it goes right back. I think they can only fly like 30 minutes at a time. And then
Okay,
it goes back and hangs out for,
all
wow.
right. So I guess my question, if we have one in Bethesda
Mhm.
and a 911 call is lodged, is that would essentially is the likely trigger, if you will, for the drone to go out? How long would it take for that drone to go from wherever its base is to be over the scene of the call, say here in the town?
totally depends on whether or not it's an hours of operation, right? So our officers we call them Raven. So the officers that are going or the sergeants that are going, or even our staff that are in our Violent Crime Information Center, which is another thing we should probably talk about, they can say, is Raven 1 up? That means, is there a pilot working? Because we have to have people to operate the drones.
Okay.
If we have someone that's able to operate that drone, we're talking about moments.
Right, okay. And last, how about nighttime vision? How well can the drone see?
Yeah, they
things
can see
night?
at night. Yep.
Even from the height that they, wow, okay.
Yep. It's pretty cool technology. I don't understand it necessarily how it does it, but I can tell you that it's working.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So our Violent Crime Information Center, I want to pause there for just a second and explain. One of the other things that we talked about in our budget, when we talked about the beginning, right? technology as a force multiplication tool. So the Violent Crime Information Center, we have a couple of retired police officers right now. We've tried to staff it a bunch of different ways. Right now, we have 2 retired police officers who open up and they are monitoring cameras throughout the county, especially in some of our higher crime areas. And they get on and they say, VCIC1, here's your suspect, right? I see them walking into the parking garage in this area. That has been amazingly effective tool for us. Because again, when you talk about we know we don't have enough police officers. We know that we have trouble getting them from one place to another in a timely fashion sometimes, or the pure volume, right? When we talk about trying to get there and as a human being, download all the information from the victim while looking at the 20,000 people that are on the downtown streets, right? How do I know? To have the value of having 2 retired police officers sitting somewhere monitoring cameras and saying, oh, I see them, is huge. Joy, I feel like you had a question.
Yes, it is the question, and I'm going to belabor the privacy point for a moment. So I'm totally in favor of this. I'll just lay it out right now. My family and I happened to get kind of sort of caught in an incident in Bethesda. It was many years ago around the restaurant area, and there was a carjacking, and the carjacker ran into a restaurant through the front door and then ran out the back door. And then there were all these police cars, and it was just ridiculous.
Scary.
It was really frightening because, I was like, I told my kids, get under the car, because if there's shooting, we don't want to really be catching any of that. And so I'm all for it. But I guess I want to get back to the question that, so you referenced there are policies that govern the use now of cameras and drones and so forth. And so presumably that would apply to this program as well.
Yes.
And I just, am wondering about the use of any footage that doesn't have to do with the particular incident in question, but if there's something else going on, does that also get caught up in that? And, maybe it should, maybe it shouldn't, but that's just a question.
Tell me what else it is, because a lot of times it's governed by the severity of what's happening.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just assume it was this situation
Okay.
where there's a carjacker and then,
So maybe like we're flying and we're looking for a shoplifter and see a carjacking, something
Correct.
like that.
Yeah.
That drone pilot is going to get on and be like, hey, let's forget about this larceny. There's somebody
Okay.
getting carjacked over
So
here.
there's like a hierarchy in terms
Absolutely.
of what you're
Absolutely.
looking at. Okay.
Yes.
And then in terms of the how the footage is saved,
Mhm.
does that like stick around, I guess, in
Yeah.
case you need it for a court case later?
So there are specific retention periods that are assigned based on what's happening, how the footage was obtained, whether it's something, for example, even for our body-worn cameras, right? Anytime you have an interaction with a Montgomery County police officer, the first thing out of our mouth is, I'm Officer so-and-so, and you're being audio and visually recorded, okay? Every single time. Traffic stop to a murder scene. The difference is on the back end. So every time an officer records you, then they have to go back and they have to categorize that video. So they're going to categorize it in a couple different ways. They could categorize it as a felony, a misdemeanor, a traffic stop, just somebody that they were talking to on the street for whatever reason. Each one of these issues has a different retention period attached to it. So if it's something like a murder or a rape, that is going to be held for a much longer period of time, generally 99 years, versus a traffic stop. A traffic stop, you might not be able to get that data after a year, right? That's all governed by that retention policy. And again, you can check that out on our website. I think that that's a public document. Or on the other side, we also have MPIA requests. So what we see a lot of is someone will be involved in something like a traffic stop, and then they'll come back and say, I want to see that video. And we'll get that MPIA request that we then have to turn around and comply with. So those are all guided by those policies and that required retention period.
Thanks.
You were mentioning earlier about, the town crime statistics and, the top one, although not a lot, is still concerning, certainly is fraud, maybe followed by larceny.
Larceny, yep.
Are those the types of calls that would have a drone come into the?
Maybe,
Okay.
probably not fraud.
Okay.
Well, you need to talk about that. Maybe for the larcenies, depending on when it occurred.
Mhm.
And a lot of what I'm seeing from the larcenies are things that didn't happen right now, right? They might have happened earlier in the day, right?
Discovered it the next
Or
morning.
discovered later. So those aren't the types of crimes that we would be looking to deploy on.
Mhm.
That said, when you look at the proposed area where the drone could fly, you are within those boundaries. So where we are thinking about putting that drone in downtown Bethesda, one of our goals is to cover down to the DC line.
Mm.
Why? Because what we see is a lot of people hopscotching from DC to Maryland, Maryland to DC.
I literally saw that. I was at the Target here.
Yes.
Fought and like saw like, 8 or 10 guys go in, take all the electronics they could. Because I'm a little stupid, I followed them in my car because I was really curious. And they went into DC. They
Mhm.
unloaded stuff into another car in DC, hit the Reebok store on Wisconsin Avenue.
I was gonna say, yep.
And unloaded that stuff. Like they just kept hitting places back and forth across the border.
Yes, and what we'll see, there's the redevelopment of Moss Gallery in DC. We're seeing the revitalization of Friendship Heights, right? We're gonna start to see more of that, I think, as we get even more commercial growth.
Mm.
So we want to make sure that we can cover our areas where we expect to see higher crime.
Any other questions at all? So you mentioned earlier about some tips you might be able to provide us. And certainly you can send that along to Todd. We'll absolutely include
I
them.
definitely will.
Yeah, that would be helpful. How can, as a town, as a council, how can we help you in supporting this drone program?
So I have to be honest, I think right now we're waiting. That being said, if you think that between now and May 23rd, is that next week? I don't even know. That's their drop dead date for the budget absolutely has to be approved by then.
Mhm.
So I encourage you, if you're so inclined, to let council know that you want this drone as first responder program here in Bethesda.
Mhm. Mhm. Good.
Okay.
Great. Any other?
Do we want to talk about crime really quickly?
Sure, please. Yeah.
So I have great news. I got to share my great news.
Well, that's good.
So I did ask for some crime analysis to be run comparing year to date this year versus year to date last year. Your town of Chevy Chase, is down across all categories with the exception of 2. One of them being fraud offenses, and we talked about that in 2023. There were 2. This year so far, there have been 5. I haven't broken them down into what kind of frauds they were, but I do want to talk about fraud generally because we're seeing a couple different kinds. One of them that's probably most concerning, just last week, we found out that someone has been making phone calls saying that they're frankly, a member of my executive staff, and that the person on the other end of the line has a warrant. And unless they send him $500, then they're going to be arrested. Thing is, Montgomery County police officers will never call to ask you for any money. Whether it's a fundraiser, whether it's to get out of a warrant, it doesn't matter. We're not calling for it. Our ethics commission says absolutely not. We don't do it. So if someone calls you claiming to be a police officer, it's safe to say that that's a fraud. Hang up the phone. You're more than welcome to call 301-279-8000, which is our non-emergency number, and make a report and just let them know someone called me.
Which, by the way, a couple years ago, somebody was spoofing.
Yes.
Because my au pair at the time actually got a call from that looked like
The
it was
police
from
station.
Yep.
Yes, which is you talk about AI and technology. We can do some kind of scary things as a society right now to other people. Yeah, absolutely. Spoofing numbers is huge. Sometimes I'll even get phone calls back on my cell phone. You just called me from this number. I absolutely did not. Right. So people are definitely savvy to do that. Another thing that we're seeing a lot of in this community is, and not specifically here in Chevy Chase, but Bethesda, which is kind of, and Kensington, a little bit of Wheaton, is this go buy gold and give it to someone, which is a kind of interesting scam, but it's hyping up. We've seen it happen a couple times where people will go trade in money, get gold bars. Think about it. It's kind of untraceable, right? Once you give somebody $500,000 in gold bars, sort of difficult for us to kind of hunt it down again. So that's another scam that we're seeing. And of course, the old on your phone, UPS has your package and we can't find you. Yeah, it's not UPS. So if you're not familiar with where that link is from, if you have any questions about it, don't click on it. For those of you that are working and it comes through your work email, I'm sure you're going through IT training every month that says, don't click those links. It's the same at home. Don't click the links. And I'll send over some more information to Todd as well, so that y'all can get it out to your community. We would definitely appreciate that. The other thing I always have to remind our communities, bring in your valuables from your cars and lock them at night. That's very, very important. Y'all are actually doing really well with that type of theft. But again, it's an important reminder. We don't want to get complacent. Bring your stuff inside at night and lock the doors.
What's the other category that's increased?
Larceny from buildings went from 1 to 3. Yes, but I don't have a ton of information on what kind of buildings those were, because they're usually shopliftings, but I don't, where do you shoplift from in the town of Chevy Chase?
Unless it's a worker or something.
Unless it's, yeah, exactly. So unfortunately, I just kind of ran out of, I looked at Mark when I got back from a meeting today. I'm like, I've got 8 minutes. I don't know that I can figure this out. So I just didn't have that chance to take that extra look. So I apologize for that.
That would include residences, any building, or homes separate from buildings.
Homes are separate. So yeah, you're looking great there.
Workers,
I'm sorry?
probably from. workers'
Probably,
trucks.
yeah.
From
Workers' trucks.
Yes. Could be. That'd be a theft from auto. You guys are actually down 50% in that category, which is fabulously unheard of. So I don't know how you're getting the word out, but keep it up. Great job. Thank you.
I did have a question about
Yeah.
we've had a couple of instances in town where the mailboxes have been vandalized and the mail actually taken out. And a lot of people won't put mail in the blue boxes in the town anymore. They'll walk over to the post office, and then the post office, the one in front of the post office got held. Yeah, well, they opened it and took the mail out.
I saw
But
that.
so I know that's United States Postal Service, probably the postal inspectors deal with that. But do you get called out for that as well?
Yes. So we love our federal partners.
Yeah.
Usually we're there first. And we generally work to solve crimes like that's what we were seeing last year, the year before. Did you work some of these too? Mark, Lieutenant Hayden can even speak to it. Do you want to?
Yeah, I can speak briefly on it. Prior to me being promoted, I was a sergeant in our library section, and we worked very closely with the United States Post Office. And we were able to close some of those cases out and actually arrest 1 or 2 people that were responsible for committing those crimes. So, and some of them have stopped at this point.
Any other comments or questions or? Well, I have to say, and I think on behalf of all of us and the residents, we really, really appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you.
I know that there's some hot spots in different parts of the town, but we really appreciate the response, the professionalism, and definitely residents feel, better, if you will.
Good.
So we will do our part and continue to communicate. It occurred to me as you were talking about different phishing and stuff like that. A couple of years ago, there was a couple of, just online programs that we offered from a town resident who offered specific, like how to deal with online, protecting kids as well as older residents. So it's 2 different sessions in that regard. So maybe it's time to repeat that.
That would be fabulous. And we would love to be a part of it. If you would like for us to come and make some presentations, we would absolutely be happy to do that.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
We will be talking about this evening and making a quick figure out how best to support this.
Absolutely. Last thing.
Yes.
If y'all can do me one more favor, plug us on social media. So if you want to know what your local Bethesda officers are doing, the Twitter is @2D Commander.
At what?
@2D Commander.
2D?
Yeah, 2.
Oh, 2D.
The number 2,
2D.
the letter D. You got it. Yep. 2D Commander.
We thought that's really informal first name.
You're right, Tootie, right.
City Commander.
You're right.
But that's kind of like where you can find the
Right,
good news. I don't
right.
do a ton of in progress just because I'm usually there,
Mm.
but you can find that at MCP News. This is more like what's going on that's good in the community. So please check it out. Get a lot of information about events, about partnerships, about what your cops are doing that you don't always see.
All right.
So, great conversation. Thanks for having us
Thank
tonight.
you. Thanks for coming. I appreciate both of you. All right. Let's call this meeting. Let's start with a pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. So those listening in, we just completed an election cycle. So what we'll start out with is the swearing in of the three of us whenever we're ready. I suppose Todd will just say it in unison and
We
go
stand
from
up and say it with our hands
Stand
up.
up, raise your right hand, and read the oath of office simultaneously.
Okay. Let's do it. I, Irene Lane, do swear and affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland and support the Constitution and laws thereof, and that I will, to the best of my skill and judgment, diligently and faithfully, without partiality or prejudice, execute the officer of council member according to the Constitution and laws of this state.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Were we supposed to, no, I guess I gotta sign this later.
Right. well, we
I
have a-
can't necessarily cross out the name, I suppose. We'll
I
take care of
thought
that
mine
later.
Needs to be notarized.
Needs to be notarized. Dave will take care of that.
We'll take care of that.
Great. Well, thank you. It's going to be a pleasure working together again for the next year. I believe that the next order of business is the election of council officers and also the committee liaisons. Would someone like to put in a motion for the officers?
Yes, I would like to make a motion. I'd like to move that it's my pleasure to nominate Irene Lane as mayor for this coming year, Joy White as the community liaison, Stephanie Martz as the secretary, Rich Mancato as the treasurer, myself, Barney Rush, as the vice mayor.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it is unanimous. Thank you.
Congratulations, and it's great to have you as our mayor again for another year, Irene.
Thank you very much. I'm touched by the support and it should be a good year for sure. I guess I'll go in and entertain a motion for, or put in a motion for the community liaisons. I'd like to start with Treasurer Brancato as a liaison to the Land Use Committee, Secretary Martz as the liaison for the Community Relations Committee, Community Liaison White as the liaison for the Long Range Planning Committee, Vice Mayor Rush for the as a liaison to the Public Services Committee, and myself as the liaison to the Climate and Environment Committee. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. We are all set for the new year. Excellent. Thank you all. Great. So Treasurer Brancato, would you like to give the report for April? please?
Yes, I would. As I mentioned at our annual meeting, we expect to realize a budget surplus this year of about $2.3 million, primarily to larger than anticipated distribution of local income taxes. We got, last month, we got 3.7, we budgeted about $3.4 million for the revenues from local income taxes, and we're projecting about 3.7. So we're going to, it's about a $250,000 surplus we're going to have in terms of the income tax. And again, the capital expenditures are less than we anticipated in 24, primarily due to delay of a number of our capital projects, but those will be incurred in 2025. There's nothing of note that's out of bounds in this month's report.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Do you have anyone have any questions?
No, I'm good.
Comments? Okay, thank you, sir. So Todd, the town manager's report, please.
Thanks. I'll touch on some key initiatives that our staff has undertaken over the past month, some of which will be discussed tonight, but I will not go into great detail about. The staff assisted with the Bethesda Market Park Development Project and attended meetings related to project coordination, budget, and park design. That will be discussed tonight. We communicated with the Montgomery County Department of Transportation about the status of the town's request to modify the fencing and barriers along the purple line alignment adjacent to the town to enhance residents' privacy and safety. And we have heard back, and Irene and I will be attending a meeting next Wednesday with MCDOT and Purple Line officials to review the change order scope that's been requested, as well as the cost estimate that's being provided by the Purple Line consortium. We've also communicated with MCDOT about traffic signal timing at Bradley Lane and Wisconsin Avenue. They do have that in their pipeline for review, and they were very responsive in putting that in there. However, we haven't received a response yet on their findings, which is to be expected. Staff communicated with SHA about the status of the new crosswalk, across the East-West Highway, which is actually currently being installed, and there's a completion date scheduled for July. We also discussed pedestrian and cyclist safety issues along that corridor, specifically overgrown vegetation on the sidewalks between what will be the new crosswalk on the north side of the new crosswalk and the access point to the Sleaford underpass, and the need for the SHA to make sure those sidewalks are clear once this new crosswalk is open, due to the highly, anticipated generation or the generation of more pedestrian and cyclist traffic as a result of a safer crosswalk. They were very responsive to that as well and said they would take care of it in the before at least July when the new crosswalk opens. Staff assisted with reviewing and analyzing state legislation and proposed county initiatives pertaining to multifamily, attainable, affordable housing. And we recently met with planning staff. I, along with Irene and Barney, met with planning staff to discuss the recommendations to be included in the planning staff's Attainable Housing Strategies Initiative report that will go to the county council in June. We communicated with Corso officials about tree removal, inventory, and permits, as well as temporary garage construction. Dave and I discussed when the council might anticipate hearing a tree removal appeal from Corso. We anticipate that likely will come in front of you in July. We addressed residents' complaints about some noise from HVAC equipment on the roof of the Lawton Center, and the county agreed to review and address that if possible. Haven't heard anything about that yet. We published the election issue of the Forecast newsletter, managed the 2024 town council election, scheduled and attended the annual meeting, finalized the FY25 budget and accompanying narrative. I certified the property tax rates to the county and the constant yield tax rate to the state. We completed the annual ARPA project and expenditure report, continued to discuss overgrown vegetation policies and enforcement issues, coordinated and managed trash and treasures event. I communicated with the executive director of Wonders Early Learning regarding financial assistance request, which you'll discuss tonight. We have begun spring asphalt and concrete repairs, continue to manage projects related to Zimmerman Park renovations and Copeland Run stabilization, which will proceed this summer. Continue to work with the town's civil engineer and affected residents on plans for stormwater management improvements on Leland and Wood, different subject. Continue to work with the town's civil engineer on plans for stormwater management projects on Leland and Woodbine, and we coordinated with the Public Services Committee on several proposed traffic safety and intersection improvement projects, as well as coordinating with affected residents. We also provided project support to town committees. In a busy month.
has been. Thank you. Any questions at all for Todd? I just had a quick question. There was a resident request for a speed study on Connecticut Avenue, and I didn't know if SHA had responded at all to that request.
MCPD has.
MC, I apologize, yes.
Yeah, I sent that request on, John on our staff documented the request from the resident. I sent it along to the ATEU manager, Automated Traffic Enforcement Unit Manager, Dan McNichol from MCPD. He acknowledged receipt and said he'll put it in his pipeline to evaluate.
Excellent. Thank you. Great. All right. The next item on the agenda is the National Gun Violence Awareness Day proclamation. This was this is an annual discussion, something that is also very important. With your permission, I'd like to read the proclamation and then have a discussion and a vote in terms of what you all think.
We have all read it, so.
Do we want for the record to read it?
Is that necessary, Todd? Read the whole.
No,
proclamation.
that's not necessary.
Not necessary? Okay, last time I read it, so it's all good. Okay. Wonderful, great. For those that have reviewed it, is there any discussion at all? And I'd like to entertain a motion for passage.
There will be some event that will be hosted at the town.
Thank
right?
you for that reminder. On Tuesday, June 4th, in this room, there will be an event. There's going to be a medical doctor from Johns Hopkins University coming in and providing information about kind of a different flavor of just gun violence awareness, the importance of it, the statistics, and what is being done regionally as well as nationally to combat this tragedy we're facing. So
Good, and I
yes.
think that's important.
Right,
Thank you.
right. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah, so I will entertain the motion to the proclamation declaring the first Friday in June to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day in the town of Chevy Chase.
I also move.
Second.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are unanimous. Thank you. Now we can in earnest continue to raise awareness about that June 4th, June 4th thing. Good, thank you. We're now moving on to public comments. I see that there are two residents on the line. If there's any public comments that you would like to make this evening, please raise your hand or unmute. Okay, not seeing any public comments. All right, so we'll move forward to the public hearing. This is a hearing on the ordinance to require real property sale disclosure regarding town regulations when there is a real property sale taking place. So when you sign that 3-inch stack of paper, when you purchase a home here in the town, there'll be one more piece of paper that will indicate not only that we are a municipality, that we're represented by a council, or the residents are represented by a council, that there are programs in place to assist residents, various good programs, as well as building regulations and other ordinances that they need to be aware of. I'm happy to open it up for any discussion. Whew, easy. You guys are easy today. Great. I will entertain a motion, please.
Irene, I believe you need to call for public comments or public hearing.
Oh, geez. Thank you, Todd. See, we're going too quickly. Are there any public comments on this? This is the whole point of a public hearing, of course. Are there any public comments about this ordinance? Okay, hearing none, comments are closed. Now I will entertain a motion for.
I move that we propose this ordinance to require real property sale disclosure regarding town regulations.
Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Rich. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Just say, because we've gone so fast over it, but it's a really good idea that we're doing this. It has happened and people are not aware. And that's very unfortunate. And this just makes sure they will be. So it's good.
That is right. That is right. Good. And now that it's passed, we'll ensure that GCAR actually gets the form up within 30 days onto their website. So now we'll go into council discussions, and the first item is the Bethesda Market Park.
And you're looking at me, perhaps?
And I'm looking just right this way.
I guess there's a few developments that I'd like to report on. One is that I think there's no doubt that the financial plan that the town put forth with our backing of up to $3 million has made a huge difference in the attitude of the partners and their focus on park design and going forward again. And of course, it's also simultaneous with our proposal. The Parks Department finally executed and approved the interim agreement, which allows them to pay for the continued work by the landscape architects. So that's sort of a double-barreled oomph, if you will, into the process. So the landscape architects are now back at it, and they have the clear message that the new design must include a shade stage area, a water feature, and reactivation of the zone over on Lot 10, which would be for the multi-generational fun play area, whatever. And so they're now working on that. And also the Parks Department has now agreed that Tuesday, June 18th will be the day for the reintroduction of the design to residents via a virtual meeting. So it'll be a virtual charrette, not an in-person. But that's, as we know, this is not just for the town. This will be for all residents in the Bethesda area. Frankly, the designs will not look all that dramatically different from what residents saw over a year ago, because what they saw over a year ago included a lot of the features, and the swoon of lopping them off happened after that discussion and now putting them back in. So, but the one additional feature which residents will see that they had not seen before is a water feature. So there'll be a discussion about that. But in any event, that's what will be shown on June 18th. And I think, again, the reason for pushing for that date was because we made it clear that we would not be in a position to vote until after that charrette had been held and residents had had a chance to respond and comment on it, and that we did wish to take a vote before our own recess. And therefore, if we were going to do that by July 10th, it was necessary for the charrette to be held. So all this has been handled, I think, very expeditiously by the parties and with goodwill. So all that's good. On the other hand, I will report that just today, we had a concerning note that came essentially from the county that while they've made a great deal of progress on the agreement between themselves and the developers called the General Development Agreement, the GDA, which is specifically for the funding and building of the underground public garage, and basically handling the payment schedule that the county will make to the developers to take this garage. In the latest round of back and forth on the document, in the latest document, what has appeared is a requirement that all the other agreements also be negotiated and concluded so that effectively all the agreements could be executed on the same day, the simultaneous closing. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with that idea whatsoever. In fact, the town actually proposed that a year and a half ago as one way to work through some issues we had at the time with the county, to say, look, if we all sign at the same time, then we all have the mutual obligations, and that sets things up well. But nobody acted on that subsequently. Nobody put that on the table subsequently. So now we're suddenly faced with this condition. And the issue with it is that the Parks Department's view of things is that they have negotiated and executed an interim agreement to allow them to do the funding that I mentioned, and that this is what to them their good faith, earnest money, if you will, for the project. They would prefer not to enter into and negotiate seriously the final agreement to cover the cost of the whole park until much closer to the date when they know the money is really going to have to go in, which won't be until really at the closing of the project's financing and after it's gotten all its permits. Between now and then, all that has to be done is design work. And as long as they're saying we're paying for the design work, we don't need everything else in place until contracts are let, we know what the final price is, and then we'll agree on that document. So there's a difference in perspective of what these agreements should cover. The concern that we have, and Irene and Todd and I all felt this, was that if the county sticks to its position and the Parks Department sticks to its position, then the county won't execute its agreement and won't release the money that is otherwise they're supposed to release to pay for the design work for the garage. And that in turn would stall the entire effort we're now trying to crank back up to get everything going again so that the developers can finish their design work that's necessary for the site plan, which we wanted to have submitted this fall. So all this came up 8 hours ago. So needless to say, we don't have answers. All I'm doing is posing what the issue is. But we're engaged. I'm engaged with some sidebar conversations with the developers, with the Parks Department, and of course, we'll have to speak to the county of just basically how this can be managed, because the one result that would really be unfortunate is to have another long delay, which we know just means more money. And especially on an issue which, had we known this was the issue some months ago, we could actually have done something about, or actually try to work something through. But to suddenly be confronted with it, to us is not the way that this should have proceeded. So this is a disappointing development. Anyway, we have to work through it. We will, but I at least wanted to let everybody know what had happened here.
When do all the parties, if you're doing these sidebar discussions, but is that the kind of thing that gets discussed in your partners meeting? I mean,
Yes, that's when this came up.
That's where
It came up
and
today.
that's where I'm resolution of it. I mean,
Oh,
will
I
they
think no,
bring
the
everybody
resolu-
together?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, Rick. Rich, I think it's a practical matter in things like this, because the parties have their sensitivities. So you need some sidebar conversations to try to find the common ground and try to find a way forward. The developers are going to meet in person with the county, I believe, next week, and they hope they can work out some. I think there'll be a discussion that'll be set up between Parks and the county, and so we'll see what room we can find. But I think the point that we really want to convey to the Department of Transportation is that a rigid approach at this point to a point like this, which causes months of delay, is not in anybody's interest. And there should be, if there's an issue that the county has about wanting assurance of mutual obligation or commitment to the project, let's find another way to handle that rather than insisting on completely negotiating agreements, which, especially in regard to the Parks Department and all candor, can take a very long time under any circumstance. And that's just because of busyness and everything else that's going on. It's not to deal with, it's not an issue of substantive issues.
Have you heard any rumblings from the developer about delay of the project?
No, we've not. And certainly they are keenly aware of the real estate issue. Okay. But I think the perspective that they also have is that they're very long-term investors. And what they're now beginning to see is a really noted improvement from their perspective in the cost of construction. They're actually coming down. It's not just leveling, it's actually coming down. So I think their feeling is at the moment that given we're still, bear in mind, even if a site plan is submitted in September, approved in January, a year to pull permits, we're not talking about construction beginning until the first quarter of 2026. So if they see a trajectory that's in their favor over that horizon, that gives them some feeling of let's stay the course. And the thing to emphasize here is that the site plan is not an inexpensive process. I mean, all of us who've been involved in Corso know what they had to go through to submit their plans. It's very expensive. And the fact that so far that's a course they're planning to stick to is good. It could change, but as of now, I have no indication that they're thinking differently.
On the plus side, even though the three of us are in these meetings every week, The design is absolutely beautiful. I think that when this community meeting occurs on the 18th of June, I think people will see that there's more granularity than what was originally presented last year. And so it's not like they're repeating the same message and all of that. It is quite lovely and will be a destination spot for the area. So
Yeah, that's good.
yeah.
And one other, I'm glad you brought that up because I think it's good design. The other thing is they are kicking off work on the traffic study. One of our residents is very concerned about traffic and what the implication would be on Leland Street if that's both the exit and an entrance. And we've already been contacted for basically what are the points surrounding the project where we would want to see the traffic study done. And that actually has to be done before June 1st because apparently there's going to be some closure of the red line for a period of time. So they want to get traffic assessment before that happens. I don't know more than that because that was news to me. The red line was going to be closed.
Certain
At certain hours, I guess.
certain stations. So
Certain
Bethesda's
stations.
not one.
Oh,
of them.
Bethesda, okay, so a certain state, okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, I guess to get a more pure
Yeah.
or consistent, I should say, reckoning of what the traffic is, they want to get the study done by June 1st. That's all. Thank
That's
you.
all. Thank you very much. Our next topic is Wonders Early Learning Financial Support. So, Rich, you can also add some more to this, but after the development of the budget and the discussions that we had with our residents, in kind of in parallel to that, Wonders Early Learning provided a presentation where they were also looking for some support that would specifically $10,000 that would specifically be geared to some capital project improvements in their facility here at the Lawton Center. So happy to discuss that and see if there would be a motion to put that on deck for public hearing next month. So happy to talk about it. I'll just put that on the.
You know, I think it's a benefit to the town for sure to have the Wonders here. And in looking at what they're trying to do, they're trying to renovate some of the old equipment in their facility, some of the stuff that they've had for 20 years almost in some instances. One of the residents stopped me the other day and said it's the same. She went there, or she went there. Her kids are now there,
The same.
and it's some of the same furniture in that period of time. So it's I think it's well worth our $10,000 investment into keeping it a vibrant facility.
Hadn't we talked about maybe increasing that investment, or is 10,000 what's?
Yeah, that's what they want.
Mhm.
I don't
That's what they
think,
asked
and they're a
for.
nonprofit, so they're not gonna, get
Okay.
more, that's what they.
Comments?
Yeah, I support also, this grant for Wonders. They do serve local residents. It's a tremendous benefit if you live in this neighborhood, and you can even get into a quality childcare or early learning facility like that, and it deserves to be updated.
Mhm. Thank you, Joy. Great.
Good.
Yeah, so I'm happy to entertain a motion to have a public hearing next month to then go from there. Yeah, at the June meeting.
Yeah,
Yes.
so moved.
So moved. Okay, all those.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Boring.
I know it is. Well, one item that, just because we had this discussion earlier, I just wanted to bring about when Commander Daum came in and provided us with the drone program information, and we specifically asked how can we support. What I heard was that send in some communication before the 23rd of May. How do you all feel about that? Happy to.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, I think we should send it whatever we can to support it. It's only what, it's a week and a half away.
Yeah, it had to be quick
It's gotta be
turnaround.
quick.
Yeah, so it would be helpful if we were all in support of sending in a letter to have some sort of parameters around that, or discretion can be used, whatever.
No, I'd like to move that we do support the drone program, and that we authorize you, Irene, to send a letter. And you can decide how you wish to have it reviewed, but I wouldn't worry too much in this case. I think a short, quick,
Short,
sweet
sweet.
letter saying, yes, we support this program is what's called for. And I don't even know if we need to have a vote, Todd.
Do
or just-
we, because
Your policy.
Council and President Friedson combined Germantown, Gaithersburg, Bethesda, are we just going to stick to the Bethesda portion? Do we want to say all three is a good idea? Like
I think I'd
how
say,
far do we want to go
I
with that?
would hope we support the budget proposal of consolidating all of them into one budget item,
Mhm.
and
I would.
hopefully they move it forward.
I think we just say we very much support having a drone program in Bethesda. I think that's all we have to say. But that doesn't mean we're trying to exclude anybody else, but we just want to make sure Bethesda is
but,
included.
Yeah, we do want to.
Or do you want to suggest that with the budget,
Well, no, yeah,
we want to support the budget proposal that includes a drone for
Right,
Bethesda?
right.
Okay,
Yes. Yes,
Mhm.
that would cover it. Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, great. Any other points to make or? Okay,
I guess I do want to say this, because I want to very much wanted to have the chance for the council to hear from the commander. That when I first heard of this, I did want to understand exactly how it would be used and what would cause it to fly over. And I think I, for one, heard very reassuring words tonight that it is only going to be in response to calls, and specifically to respond to potential criminal acts. It is not hovering. It is not otherwise moving around the area. It goes back to its home base and it comes out again. So it really is truly a first responder that can get to the scene much faster often than a cop can. And that can make a huge difference in terms of safety for the community and catching somebody. And I don't think there's a privacy or a civil liberty issue here that we have to be concerned with. So that's,
No,
it gave me a lot of
after you
comfort on
raised
that.
the issue, and I went and looked at the website. And if you go into their website, it's very specific. It's, it's initiated from a 911 call. And there's another sentence at the end, this will not be for surveillance.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. And I appreciated the additional information. I've taken notes here that we can provide to just residents in general in terms of crime prevention and, do your part kind of a thing. So great. So get the letter penned and sent out hopefully next couple of days so that we can get this out the door. I'm thinking end of business tomorrow, but we'll see. We'll see if we can do that. Great. Thank you for that. And unless there's something else here, the last thing that I had was the Attainable Housing Strategies Initiative. Was there anything else I'm missing here? Okay, so thus far, there have been 2 work sessions on the Attainable Housing Strategies Initiative provided by the Planning Department to the Planning Board. And of course, people have listened in. One has been about the medium scale attainable housing. The other one has been about small scale attainable housing. And what we did, the group of us that are kind of listening in on these sessions have crafted a town crier that summarizes, okay, this is what small scale is about, and another town crier is what medium scale is about. And we have received some comments from residents, questions, comments, things like that. Tomorrow will be a 3rd session on large scale attainable housing, as well as some other items, like it doesn't warrant its own separate session, if you will. And we'll, of course, produce a town crier from there. And there'll be supposedly two other wrap-up sessions of other questions that have come up based on planning department comments and, kind of clarifications. And as Barney noted earlier, or someone did, that the report will go to the county council by the end of June. I think it was Todd, I apologize. So in the meantime, as you all know, the state had, the Governor Moore has signed into legislation the Affordable Housing Expansion and Affordability Act of 2024. And what we've been focusing on is kind of where those meet and where they don't, and where there might be some additional clarification. And Todd, Barney, and I had a good conversation this morning with the planning director and Lisa Gavoni, who has been primarily responsible for the Attainable Housing Strategies Initiative, just posing some clarification questions. You know, is this the way we're reading it and things like that. And they appreciated that we were bringing some stuff they hadn't specifically thought about themselves, because it's mired in the details. There's just a lot going on. And our basic question is about R60, R90, R200, but R60, which is what we are. If a ZTA were to be passed by the county council, are we considered still a single family residential zone, or are we considered a multifamily residential zone, which has implications for the state legislation? And there's some question around that. There's some interpretation around that. So the planning department is going to go back to their legal staff. They're also going to speak with the council staff, because that will also be a part of the equation, so that everyone is on the same page as to the impact. What was also discussed today is like the idea that there will be technical amendments to this legislation introduced in the 2025 General Assembly. And I don't think anyone is surprised by that. There's just some clarifications that are necessary. So in addition to the technical amendment that we are proposing on behalf of municipalities for clarification, there will also be there are discussions. And the goal is that it's the planning department, municipalities, and the county council that are going forth as a partnership to say, we need these technical amendments, so that there isn't a usurping of county council authority as it relates to zoning, and there's clarity as it relates to the municipal authority. So I don't know if there's any other thing there. Okay, so that.
I guess
yeah,
and Irene had set it up very well, and I think walked Jason and Lisa very well through it. And so they really got the linkage that was not, I think, entirely apparent before. But I think what they really did take on board was that they don't want any unintended consequences falling out of county legislation that would have this effect that Irene described. And so keeping it as tight and surgical, and recognizing that while, you know, even today, when you have a single family residential neighborhood defined as such, you have all sorts of different uses in that happen anyway, right? This building, the Hutton Center, firehouses, all sorts of things. So there's no reason why you can't keep something labeled as what it is, even though, you know, it is gradually changing and some different uses are appearing. It still is what it is predominantly. And I think they got that point and they want to work with it. So I felt that we, thanks to Irene's way we went through it, that they're sympathetic to trying to get to a point that will be as not cause a ricochet effect, if you will, from the county, from the state, but it may still require a clarifying amendment in any event to make sure that there's not.
Yeah.
I have a question. In those conversations, are you, not you personally, but those people who are a part of the conversations on attainable housing strategies, is there a goal? So, you know, the governor's legislation cites, you know, we're short so many thousands of housing units. We have introduced this slate of laws to increase the supply of housing units. Is that, do we have a county number as well that we're trying to get to? And then a sense of, you know, where would those additional units, you know, be in the county? Because, you know, we're not the only R60. There's a lot of R60s, many of which could be even more vulnerable to, you know, exactly, redevelopment and buildings that have two, three or four more, you know, more units.
Yeah, so the governor stated conservatively 95,000 units across the state of Maryland. We're short by that. So there's two different numbers out there. One is the DC regional number that I've seen. So it incorporates DC as well as Northern Virginia and PG and Montgomery counties, which is about that same number. So, you know, the 90s or something. And I can't tell if that's conservative or if that's their high number. I don't know exactly, but that's through the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. That's that number that I saw. The county has produced a kind of a heat map, is the best way I can say it, where they're saying the probability of redevelopment would occur here, here, and here. And that is tied directly to transit. So if you're near transit, they're envisioning that there's a higher probability of multifamily housing development versus other parts of the county. And so it's not numbers oriented as much to say, oh, the Chevy Chase portion of this is 5,000. You know, I'm just making up a number. There hasn't been that level of specificity. It's just the heat map will say, what is the probability? What is that area? What areas are ripe for redevelopment? So we're one of those areas, but there's also just as many in the eastern part of the county where ostensibly land prices are lower and, you know, there's more people moving.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, that's what I mean is that the danger, I mean, here, you know, we're not likely to be gentrified here, but certainly some of those other areas that are, you know, other R60 neighborhoods where land costs are lower. I mean, they could just be overrun by, you know, people could go in and buy up a ton of those build single family homes and create multifamily homes there. And so I guess you know, how do we think about our question? Our question is, we want the current rules with respect to how we govern buildings, massing, you know, setbacks and all of that to apply to any building built here. So presumably that would apply if you're in another community. I'm not going to name any other community, but any other community would, if they have got such rules, would also want those to apply regardless of the type of building and the number of dwelling units on a particular parcel.
Yeah, so not all municipalities have in Montgomery County have different building regulations than what the county does. Some just like default to what the county has as their regulate, but that's their choice. I mean, it depends. But it's been made very clear in the recommendations report that for attainable housing, because they name town of Chevy Chase in the report, that you know, in some areas ours are a little stricter in terms of setbacks and height, and those will be respected. So ultimately, to answer your question, yeah, our goal, we can't predict the future. The idea that it would be overrun, Barney said this earlier, like, you know, our 60s were allowed to have ADUs. It's not as if we've been overrun with ADUs. Anywhere in the county. It's not just the town of Chevy Chase, but anywhere in the county. It's just not being built as much as they would have. So the planning department will say, we just want these additional allowable uses. Let's make it a little bit easier to build if they wanted to, but that doesn't necessarily translate to there's going to be, you know, even 10 homes in a year built in the town of Chevy Chase. It's just a different market driven, right? But yes, our ultimate goal is to understand, get that clarification that our building regulations will be respected. So, and we'll treat everyone equally, whether it's a single family building or a multi-family building, everyone's going to be treated the same. And that what is that underlying zone going to look like? Because there's potential unintended consequences from that. So I hope that answers the question there. Okay. Did you have a question?
Hadn't we discussed informally at one point whether it would make sense to commission a study on the impact that loosening up or encouraging multifamily units in R60s would have on the town?
Yeah, I think it just became very cumbersome because when you do a study, it's just a point in time study. Because of course, interest rates factor into it, construction costs factor into it, the topography of that land versus next.
Well, that
somebody
doesn't
next door.
change though.
Well, but it number of trees, like there's a few things that would change. So I think that when we had some initial later on follow-up discussions coming out of what you just said, that we had an informal idea around that. I think what having like subsequent conversations, we said it may not be actually something that would be worthwhile for everyone to have that because it's such a specific point in time that information would
What do you
be
mean for,
valid
I wasn't part of those discussions. So
No, I
don't
know,
what-
but I'm saying subsequent discussions with others that outside kind of experts and stuff. It was just a point in time that wasn't going to be useful necessarily for residents or anyone else to factor in. So, okay, that's all that I got on that. So to be continued on that. And we're going to be starting discussions with our state delegates so that we can introduce the technical, at least on that side, the technical amendment. And we do have planning department support for that. They'll support all us as municipalities for that. And that's all that I have for that. Cool. Anything else for this evening? Such a short meeting, 52 minutes. No? No? All right. We are adjourned. Thank you.